Hello, today I'll be doing some maintenance on the Infiniti QX80 and I will be changing the oil. The first thing I do with vehicles like this is go to the owner's manual and look for the technical and consumer information section, which is section 9 in this book. And right in the beginning, there's a section on capacities and recommended fluids / lubricants. I'm interested in the engine oil, and it says if I were to change the oil and oil filter, I would need to have 6 7/8 of a quart, and for my own sake, I'll keep a minimum of 7 quarts handy. However, if you were changing the oil without the filter, then all you would need is 6.5 quarts. I prefer to just go all the way, so that's it. So knowing the capacity, make sure I have enough of the fluid. But 2, I'd like to know what kind of fluid I need to have. It says 0W20, however, right here it says 5W30, also meets all the requirements needed, and that's what I'm going for. I use 5W30, it's easier to find, and I've used 0W20 in the past, but I feel like 5W just works a little better for me. So that's one of the first things. Second thing is that this vehicle right here, it's nice, it's convenient, it's got remote start. And remote start, let's just go over that. There you go. It's nice and convenient, right? Let's turn it off. See, that could be a danger if you've got more than one key fob, because I only have this one with me. What I could do is go get the other key fob with me so that no one inadvertently starts the vehicle with engine oil drained out of the engine. But there's a way I could bypass that. Unlock the door, pop the hood. Right here. Okay, and with the hood up, if you tried to remote start the vehicle, it would not work. So yeah, I like the hood option. It's nice, simple, but sometimes you end up forgetting and shutting it for various reasons. I usually don't shut the hood at all while doing my oil changes. Very rarely would I need to, but in addition to that, I usually put the keys up here, and that way it serves as a reminder, because when I see the keys up there, I can say there's got to be a reason my keys are in the engine bay. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is make sure I've got all the tools, and I'm going to record this video, so hopefully it does help in one way or another. I'm going to do this as one of those real-time videos I usually share. Thankfully, being as tall an SUV as it is, I do not need jacks, so it's nice and stable. So no concerns about safety, just need to make sure that everything will be fine. So I'll go get the rest of the equipment, rest of the supplies, and get to work. At this point, I've got all the parts, tools, supplies, and any other resources I should need to complete this oil change. I could start by checking the engine oil level. I usually do that for reference. So first thing, make sure that your vehicle is as level as possible, as flat as possible, and then come here. When you look at the dipstick before an oil change, it's just a reference point, so that I should know if it was already low and then I drain a certain amount of fluid out, right? I should not overfill it. Some people don't even do that. Some people just drain it all and then just add what the owner's manual says, then they compare it to the dipstick. Some people do not even look at the dipstick at all. But I usually think that you can never be too careful, too detailed when it comes to something as important as your lubrication system. However, I'm not going to check my oil dipstick right now because the vehicle has just been running. I would like to give it a little more time for the oil to go into the sump, into the oil pan basically, and then I could get more of a true reading, a truer reading. But right now I'm going to use this time to go underneath the vehicle and do some prep. Let me set the camera down here so we can see what I'm working with. At the bottom of these vehicles, you have a skid plate. This one right here, it protects the radiator as well as the other components on the front of the engine. I need to remove that to be able to access the oil filter. But if you were just changing the oil without the filter, the drain plug is right there, pretty easily accessible. These 12, are these 12s or 14s? These are 14 millimeter bolts, and these, well, they're bigger than 12s. They might be 13. These hold the bumper cover onto the frame, but that's not what you need. I need Since the skid plate is fairly rigid, it's only held on by 2 bolts up front and 2 bolts at the back. 14mm, and you can see a cutout right here. Well, might have been a little, maybe 13. I'll have to push it back in. Okay, let's try it again. Okay, that went much better. Well, let's try this. I've got 14 here. Yeah, seems like it's actually more of 13. Let me go get a proper tool for it. Okay, I'm back with the right size tool. 13mm is interesting. As you can see, my socket is fairly unused. It's because I can't even remember the last time I used the 13. But here we are, open to new adventures. You might have seen the whole thing come down a little bit. Then let's go to the back. I'm sorry that the camera cannot go any flatter than it is, but there are access holes here, one here and another one here. One. I have to protect my face because this should be coming down. There you have it, people. Interesting, quite exposed. I guess the design. Oh, this will be such an easy radiator to replace, though. Radiator, condenser. Let's stick to the plan, though. Let's work on what brought us here. So before draining anything, I need to go ahead and go back up there, check the oil level. You're looking for this yellow thing over there. Let's wipe it. And as I said, this is just for reference to know where I started so that I can know where to stop. I've checked the oil. I check it quite frequently, but for the oil change, just to have a better idea. Pull it out again. It's beyond full is what it says. That's interesting, is all I can say to that. And you've noticed that the oil is rather clean. Yes, it's possible that it had been changed right before I bought it, but I don't take many chances when it comes to things like this. Okay, so oil done. I do have the correct oil filter here. And when I buy these, they usually come with a drain plug washer. I'll reuse that. Well, or rather, I'll use that. I'm taking this out because I'd like to note down the mileage. I usually note down the date and mileage whenever I do my oil changes. I took a picture earlier right there. You might not be able to see it, but it says 94,854. So let's go for it. Okay, I've marked the oil filter up. I'm going to give it time to dry so that I don't smear that. Let's look at the skid plate. Yeah, trust me, I did think of any other ways we could make it any easier to remove, but 4 bolts can't beat the simplicity of that. I'm looking at this area right here. This is where the oil filter usually is, and I can tell that it's a little damp. So I'm going to pay extra attention to that, just in case the oil filter has been leaking. So I'll start by draining the oil. Every Nissan drain plug bolt I've ever dealt with has been a 14 millimeter, so that's a good place to start. That is tight. It's in a steel pan though. I'm hoping there's no funny business like cross-threading going on. It's like loose, tight. Okay. We'll be shooting out hot in 3, 2, go. Well, now that's real black. Way darker than what we saw up there, huh? Give it time. So I'm expecting around 7 quarts out of that, because it was like full at the dipstick. As I said, this is a little extra. You don't really need to do all that, but I just choose to. Close. While that keeps draining, I'm going to prepare the drain plug, because it drained pretty fast. I suppose there are advantages to using a steel bottom pan. So right here we've got the copper crush washer. I'm glad they used it, whoever did the oil change last. Now removing it though, sometimes you need help from screwdrivers, knives. Okay, I'm back down here. I managed to remove the old one. Here's the new one. We'll wipe it just to be safe. And the reason I'm dealing with the drain plug fully rather than looking at draining the oil filter, it's because of the location. See how far this is from there? Normally I'd be able to just turn the whatever pan I'm using to collect oil and it can drain from both sides, but this one is a little farther than I'd like, so I'll just focus on that. And by now it's slowed down to a drip. Now if you wanted, you could possibly tilt the vehicle, jack it up so that you can drain all the oil, or as much more oil as you could get. In fact, let's give that a try. Let's just see what comes out whenever I do that. Oh, there you go. It's dripping just a little more. And we'd like to get as much old oil as we can. I don't know what I missed. I don't know what dripped out while I was still out there dealing with it, but doesn't hurt. Doesn't hurt. It's still a trickle, you know, regardless of the angle, so I'm not too worried about it. Okay, since it was just a trickle, I decided to stop. If I had more time, maybe I'd just let it keep dripping until it stopped, but the way I look at it, some fresh oil is better than none. After all, this is all usually just a matter of dilution, right? So let's go ahead and place the bolt. First, I'm going to wipe this. The vehicle is a softened vehicle, so I'm glad it does not have much rust. Yeah, you might see some surface rust in places like this. That's unavoidable anywhere, really. But when you see oil pans rusting, now you do have a problem. There isn't much resistance, but I need to crush that washer. That's how it seals. There is a torque spec, but as you can imagine, I'm not using it right here. I'm relying on my years of experience tightening drain plug bolts as to when enough is enough. And that looks to be it. Now let's switch to the oil filter. All right, oil filter. As you can see, we do have an oil filter here, but we have a unit right behind it. This is an oil cooler, and it has oil in it, but it has coolant as well. If you were to just open this, it would drain and spill all over some different components. But Nissan has been doing this with their SUVs for a while. They give you this plate that directs any stray oil, so to say, to go and drain in a more controlled manner. So let's see how tight this one is. Still pretty hot. It wasn't too tight. That's good. Look at that. Well, I suppose I should have done it a little faster, huh? Okay. Did I mention earlier that it's advisable to use gloves? Well, now you know. Thankfully, all V8s, all Nissan V8s pretty much use the same oil filter. This one right here, 15208 9E01A, so it's not too complicated. I usually buy these in bulk. I think I buy like, I feel like I bought 20 at one time, some time back. And it's the same one that's used by the GTR as well. But I'm sure you can geek out about the different qualities if you wish to, and different manufacturers. But arguments on oil filters are just like arguments about what oil to use. Just do whatever makes you happy. I could wait for a while for this to keep dripping, but again, how long is that going to take, you know? If I had two drain pans, which I'm going to consider going forward, I could have drained this earlier while the oil was doing its thing. The oil filter would have also, or rather while I was draining from the oil pan, the main drain plug over there, I could have been doing this on the oil filter as well. Now I'm looking at this and I understand that this says Mali, by the way, or Male, M-A-H-L-E, EZ3 or EZ3 0A or OA. So, in case you ever need to replace it, you know. What I'm doing right now, what I'm doing is applying a little bit of fresh oil on this seal so that when I go to put it on, friction doesn't grab it. So is it ever going to stop? Well, yes, I just don't know when. So what I'm going to do is give it a final dab and go on with this. Okay, it's hand tight +1. Well, 3/4 of a turn is what they usually say. Now, I'm doing this, and I need to go here, see if I can really see anything from the top. Sometimes I clock these in such a manner that I can read whatever written on the oil filter from the top. Yeah, I don't think it will matter that much over here, but I'll clock it one more. I'm doing this with slippery hands, so it's not too crazy. Okay, that's it. And then come here, wipe the bottom. As much as that cooler itself is not leaking, I do understand why the skid plate was damp around this area, because it's still oil over here, and over time it's going to drip. And I'm guessing your quick lube places are not going into putting the effort of wiping everything down like I am right now. You know, take things off and put it back on and keep moving. All right, well, we're done putting things back together. Now it's to go and add oil, then make sure that nothing leaks. Okay, so I'm going to drain the used oil into one of these jugs to see how much I get. So these are all fresh oil. I usually mark them when they're brand new so that at least I can know what 5 quarts is going to be, because the grading usually ends at 4 quarts. Well, 4 quarts, and you don't really get the 5 written. But to create to get an empty jug, I need to drain something. So I'm going to empty at least one jug in here. At least I know it needs a minimum of 5. So let's go with this one first. And even before putting the skid plate back on, I do this just to make sure that nothing's leaking. My drain plug, the oil filter. And I'm tilting this sideways so that I can avoid burping. Now I can do this. Okay, 5 quarts in. Give it time to settle. And then go ahead and I'm going to pour till it gets to here, then, just keep moving on. You have to remember that some oil is in here. That's why they even tell you different capacities depending on whether you're doing an oil filter change or not. That looks really dark. Thing is, I don't really clean this one out, so it might have some old dirty oil from different sessions. But one thing I'll tell you about the VK56 VD engine, direct injected and all that, it gets oil dirty so quick. I'm surprised that dipstick looked as clean as it did. Okay, there's 5 quarts. I have another one here. Let's see, take us to 6. Okay, 6 quarts. And what I'm gonna do is empty this one in there. We need a minimum of 6. We need 6 7/8. So let's pour this in there. Just for fun, let's go ahead and look at the dipstick, see where 5 quarts has gotten us. My guess, it's not even showing on the graded scale. Typically between the minimum and maximum hole, it's usually 1 quart for Nissans. I believe I had a Benz where that was actually 2 quarts. Okay, put it in, pull it out. Oil does not even register on minimum as predicted. So let's go ahead and pour this 6th quart in. would still be down 7/8, which is pretty much a quart, depending on how well I drained it when I tilted the vehicle, which means that with this addition, it might read just at the minimum level. So give it time, and then we'll come back and read it again. Meanwhile, I'm going to use this to collect more oil, more used oil. Seven quarts. That's 7 out already. And still got more to go. Okay, we have our final tally. 7.5 quarts. This one here is just a little above half. And assuming you got a little more in there, so maybe even 7 7/8, who knows. But all the oil that I took out, as you might have noticed, 7.5 is way more than what the owner's manual told me I should expect to put in when changing the oil filter. It says with just an oil change I'd be looking at 6.5, and with an oil plus oil filter I'd be looking at 6 7/8, at most 7. But right now you've already seen that I've taken out, or at least I've accounted for more than that already. Maybe that half quart was due to me tilting it this way and ending up draining a little more. But what I'm going to do is that I've put in 6 right now. I know that's less than they call for, but since we're curious, we're going to check again, just to see where it registers now. Not even at the minimum yet. Nope, not yet. So what I'm going to do is put a whole quart in. 1 whole quart. And then see what happens. So for this, since I can't really measure a whole quart properly using a big jug like that, I usually keep these jugs, some clean ones, and I'm going to use my clean oil funnel, pour a quart in here, and then dump it in there. And then pour another quart, just have it waiting. But that way, I'll be able to meter what I'm putting in. This is, I wouldn't say a lesson, but just a reminder that you should not just blindly add a certain number of a certain quantity of oil. It depends on how you drained your oil. Sometimes you might drain it with your vehicle at a slope, so you're not getting all the oil that you could get out. And then if you go ahead and just blindly put in 6 7/8, you might be overfilling your engine. So just a reminder that sometimes it takes a little bit of math to do this. If in doubt, just make sure that your vehicle is flat when you do the drain, and then just start with something like 6, or when it calls for something like 6 7/8, start with 6.5 and just see where that goes. Right now, as you've seen, I'm aiming for 7, and then keep watching. So that 7 might actually get it into the dipstick, but then I still need to put more. So I'm not ready to start the car yet, but I can still look here, just looking for leaks. That looks good, nice and dry. And then here, nice and dry. So far so good, but I'm going to start the engine once I'm confident in the amount of oil in there, and then I'll come back and check the oil level later. So I added up all the fluid that I took out, at least what I could collect outside of the oil filter, and I took out just a little more than 7.5 quarts. I poured in 7 quarts, and I'd like to see where that shows up in the dipstick. The engine has had enough time. It's been sitting for a significant amount of time. This is the challenge with clean oil. You can't barely see it. Right here it's showing that it's right above or right at the maximum level. But remember, when I was reading the dipstick before draining any oil, it did show that it was a little more than full. So at this point, it's a leap of faith. I'm going to start the engine, run it around a little bit, and then when the oil gets a little dirty, I can come back and check the level. At least I know that it's not low. That's pretty important. All right, let's go ahead and do this. Meanwhile, inside the vehicle, sounds okay. Turn down the fan. Info. Maintenance. Engine oil. I suppose I was coming up to the reminder. What I'm going to do is this. Reset the distance. Back. Oil filter. Reset the distance. I don't really need the reminder for the oil filter because I do the oil and oil filter at the same time. Tire, I'm getting pretty close to the tire reminder. They say 5,000. I'm supposed to do something at 5,000. I'll leave that on. I don't know how close I am to it, but I'll leave it on right now because I've not done anything to the tires. Other reminder, I've got 15,000. I'm not 100% sure what that's supposed to be, but I'd like to set a reminder for other fluids for myself. That is, maybe not the transmission fluid, but the differential, rear differential, front differential, and transfer case. Those three things, I believe when this comes around, I will make a point of addressing them. Otherwise, tires, I'll just go ahead and rotate them whenever I get an opportunity, and then I'll reset the tire reminder. Okay. I just noticed this. I've got a maintenance reminder sticker here. It says it's from Don Franklin Nissan. I bought it from Don Franklin Hyundai, and it says, thank you for your business, return for service on December 20th, 2023 with the mileage of 99,317 miles. Right now it's got 94,854. Assuming that's a 5,000 mile oil change based on what I see there, or based on what people default to, then that must mean that they changed the oil at 94,317. The math is really tight, man. I feel like maybe it might be 6,000. I'm not 100% sure. That would mean that they changed the oil at 93,317. I have to look at my old videos and see how many miles it had when I picked it up. But that might mean that I just drained oil that was supposedly pretty new within 1,000 miles. But I don't regret it. To me, it's maintenance. You know, you can, yes, there is something like over maintaining, but there's nothing like too much peace of mind, you know. At least I know when the last oil change was done, then I can work with it. And if that was the case, why did they not change the why didn't they not reset the oil reminder? Yeah, so anyway, as I said, I'm just making inferences based on the fact that I bought the vehicle from Don Franklin, so I'm guessing they changed the oil right before selling it. It's also possible that they were going there for maintenance. I'll have to check the Carfax records to see. And now Carfax is an interesting thing because my car is not going to a dealership to get maintained. I'm doing my stuff at home. So this is the kind of vehicle that you buy and the records are blank because I'm maintaining my stuff. I'm not neglecting it. In fact, I might be doing better than what something that's being taken to the dealer is getting, but it is what it is. It's a price to pay, you agree to pay, you know. Are you going to focus on the sale price and the resale value and having records in Carfax, or are you going to do what's best for you? I choose the latter all the time. One final look under the vehicle just to make sure that nothing is leaking. Well, something is leaking in the back, but since this is summer, I'm not too worried about the water leaking. It is condensation. I'll check the oil drain plug. And it looks good. I'll check the oil filter. And it looks good. So I'd say this has been a pretty successful exercise. What's left to do is now just go ahead and put the skid plate back on and we should be back in business. Now that I've confirmed that there are no leaks over here, it's time to reinstall the skid plate, and installation is going to be the reverse of removal. Starting that by hand. Started the other one by hand as well, so all is well. Starting that by hand. Started the other one by hand as well, so all is well. This is nice. This is very easy. The only way it would be easier is if I did not have to remove the Alright, the vehicle ran and I've given it time to settle. So I'm going to check the dipstick again. Just as a reminder, I took out 7.5 quarts. I put in 7 quarts. One theory could be it doesn't matter because it was at the full mark of the dipstick when it checked. I'm grateful that they're big bolts, which does not feel the one thing is breaking and sharing that during the process of removal, you know? Because when I checked prior, it was more than
We're
this
back
one.
in business.
It was a little hard to read, but it was clearly more than the maximum
pretty
hold.
well designed.
So we could say that it
Why
was
can't we have
overfilled
something like this for the sedan?
I saved it. Yeah. Comes up there. Well, maybe just a little lower. Just a little lower than the top hole. But I'll give it more time. What I'm going to need to do is come back with time and look at it again. But for now, I think we're good. A few hours later. So fractions of a quart